So how are we doing? Great. Good. Great. Okay. So we're in sermon number 3 of our sermon series. And the sermon series is titled Under Construction, a People Shaped by God. And the sermon this morning is entitled Ask, Plan, Tell. Ask, Plan, Tell. So let's just do a quick review. Last week we talked about Nehemiah and where we found him. Actually, let's talk about hide and seek. I'm going to ignore that. Make sure you all got that. Right? Right? Do we like to play hide and seek as youth, Trinity? We love it, don't we? Yeah. You don't. You like to play hide and seek? Yes. With the grandchildren? Yeah. It's fun, right? You all remember playing hide and seek when you were at least younger, right? Okay. Your parents are probably still playing it, right? Okay. So let me ask you a question. As a parent, do you take advantage of being an adult when you play hide and seek with your kids?
Oh yeah.
How many of you have heard that cry? I'm done, I quit, I can't find you, and they march off and you're going, yes! Okay, so you're happy. I'm not the only one that's done that. It is cruel, isn't it?
That doesn't always work. The older two have the third one.
See, a man to come to one child.
That's right. With one, it doesn't work too well. And you know what? In youth group, we've got a couple of our youth that are really good at hiding. And even when I help the younger ones try to find them, we can't find them. Well, that's what they do. We get creative in the way we hide, right? And so I want you to just think about that for a second in your relationship with God. Do you ever feel like God is hiding from you? Never? Nobody? You used to? Okay. I felt like God's hiding from me before. Just not answering the question that I'm asking, right? Or not answering the prayer. Obviously, this is your will, God. This prayer I'm praying for, you've got to answer it. And the answer never comes. And think about that. But what I think really is happening is we like to think we know where God's leading, but truthfully, we should often expect God to go where we lead. Right? And that's the connection. You know, we like to make God in our image rather than us being made in God's image. Right? I don't know if you can see the picture up there, but it's a bunch of sheep with dark sunglasses on. Right? The blind leading the blind. Right? And don't we do that from time to time? Don't we get stuck in that rut? You know? God, surely this is what you want. Why aren't you answering this prayer? And you get lost in what's really taking place. Get lost. So with Nehemiah, last week what we learned was that Nehemiah's heart was broken, right? He got really upset when he heard the news that the walls of Jerusalem were broken and they were no longer. He got upset. The doors, the gates had been burned down, and his heart was broken. And he was at a loss, right? He grieved. Scripture said he grieved for days. But this week what we find out is he's transitioning, right? He's grieved. And we talk about when we grieve, in the midst of that grief, you get a glimpse of maybe where God is guiding you or directing you to go. A glimpse. The plan's not fully laid out. You don't know an ABCD all the way to the end, but you get a glimpse of maybe where things are going, where you're headed. And what we learn about from Nehemiah is that Nehemiah asked. He asked a question. That's the first thing he does. In Nehemiah chapter 2 and verse 5, it says this. And he's talking to the king. He says, if it please the king, and your servant has found favor with you, please send me to Judah, to the city of my family's graves, so that I may rebuild it. And this is the glimpse that Nehemiah has gotten, is a glimpse of some sort of rebuilding. And he seeks permission to go. And Nehemiah gets an overwhelming yes. And Scripture doesn't say yes and amen, but an overwhelming yes, go. You know, you have earned the right to do that, is what the king tells him, basically. You can go. You can go and care for the city that means so much to you. And so Nehemiah asks, do we ask when we start to get glimpses of the future? Do we ask questions of people around us? Do we ask questions of God? Do we seek guidance, wisdom? The next thing Nehemiah does is Nehemiah planned. And this is my favorite part of the story. It's in the same chapter, but verses 11 and 12. And what it says is, when I reached Jerusalem and had been there for 3 days, I set out at night, taking only a few people with me. I didn't tell anyone what my God was prompting me to do for Jerusalem, and the only animal I took was the one I rode. Nehemiah has gotten this glimpse of the future. He's asked, and he's kind of sought the guidance, he's been sent. And now he's in Jerusalem, and he's pondering, what is this really rebuild that God's calling you to going to look like? How's it going to take place? What's really broken? So this is when we begin to dig into the reality of the glimpse and what it looks like, and what the parts and pieces are like. And Nehemiah is taking this all in, and he goes in the cover of night to explore the city and the walls and look at them. He's keeping it to himself right now because he's processing, he's planning. He's trying to take that glimpse and mold it into something a little bit different than just a glimpse. What's step one? Maybe step two of taking this to the next level, to following this glimpse that God has given him of rebuilding. What can I do to take those first steps into the unknown? Right? He really doesn't know what's going to happen here. He doesn't know if anybody's going to be against him or if they're going to be for him. All he knows right now is God has called him to this time and this place for this reason, and given him this glimpse of the future, still yet to be defined. And after his night walking the walls and checking out what's going on and trying to take an assessment of what really is before him, the work that is before him, he comes back and Nehemiah told someone. We read that in chapter 2, verses 17 through 18, when we read these words. So I said to them, you see the trouble that we're in? Jerusalem is in ruins, and its gates are destroyed by fire. Come, let's rebuild the wall of Jerusalem so that we won't continue to be in disgrace. I told them that my God had taken care of me, and also told them what the king had said to me. So Nehemiah sought direction, he asked. And he showed up in Jerusalem, and he's gone out into the walls and explored it, and he's begun to plan, understanding that God is guiding this new step in his life, this new season, this new direction. And after he's come back from that, he realizes that, one, he can't do it by himself. This is a monstrous undertaking, rebuilding a wall around the city. This is not a job for one person. This is a job for a large community to rebuild this wall. And so he begins to share his plan with others. He tells them, look, I saw advice. I got sent here. I've seen the trouble we're in. I've seen the disgrace that it causes our people. And what I want us to do is begin to rebuild that disgrace and build back our honor and our security, to build back the wall. God is calling me for a time such as this, he tells the people, to make a difference in our community, to make a difference in our Jerusalem. He goes on to say, let's start building. Actually, this is what the people say. Let's start building, they said, and they eagerly began to work. What Nehemiah realizes real quick is that God's laid this ideal in other hearts too. It's not just his. And there are others that are going to step into this act of rebuilding the wall. God's called Nehemiah to be the leader of this opportunity, of this moment in time. But he's providing him the resources through what the king will provide, through materials, and through the people who it's already been placed on their heart, that this is something that we want to be involved in. Nobody just knew how to get it started. And it took Nehemiah to come along and put this in front of the people. And the people said, yes, we're all in. Let's do this thing. Let's get it done. And they began to rebuild the wall. So the question that I have for you is do you have a story? We've talked about story in our lives, right? Do you have a story? Do you have a dream in your life? Do you have a glimpse of something that God has given you towards your next steps? What are your next steps? Are you ready to take the first step on a new adventure, a new renovation in your life? Where are you going? Where is God taking you? And the beauty is, God reminds us that you're not alone. No matter what, you're not alone, because God's gone with Nehemiah throughout this journey. God has provided Nehemiah the resources and the people to get on board with what's taking place, just like God will do for us. When we get that glimpse and we step out in faith and we take that first faithful step, God shows up. And God makes a difference in our lives and the lives of those around us. Because we are making a faithful step towards God's direction, towards God's will. Nehemiah asks, he plans, and he tells someone. And we all need to find ourselves in that place. We need to share our glimpses of what's going on and processing in our head and seek the wisdom and the encouragement to go out and begin to plan. And then seek the resources that God will provide when we are faithfully stepping out in God's name. That's the lesson of Nehemiah. That's what he's teaching us at this point in the story. And there's a few questions that we need to remember, that we need to hang on to, that we're going to ask. What you need to know. And so they're not hard questions, and let's look at them. The first one is, renovation is hard. You need to know this. We've talked about this. I think this is the third time we've talked about this. Renovation is never easy. If you ask any contractor, and haven't done this for 23 years, and know the answer to this question, it is a lot easier to start from scratch than it ever is to grab a hold of the stuff that's already there and rebuild. Any of you that's ever renovated a home know this, because you never know what's behind that wall. Right? And so renovations are always harder than starting over. But we're not called to start over. We're called to start with where we are, with the baggage that we have, and to move forward with that which God's call on our life. So renovation is hard. God is preparing others too. That's the beauty of the Nehemiah story. When he finally got around to telling, he realized, hey, I'm not the only one answering this call. I have been put here to be the leader of it. it, maybe. Or maybe I've been put here to be a worker bee in the midst of it. Maybe I've been put here to pray for the people that are going to be going forward with this renovation project. But there are others that are in tune with what you're doing, because God has given all of us glimpses of His future for us as a congregation, for us as a community, for us as the world. And we need to look for that. Renovation requires faith. This is probably the most obvious one up there. But you got to have faith that God is guiding you, that glimpse is of God, that you can trust God to provide the resources in situations where it seems hopeless. Could you imagine how Nehemiah might have felt when he walked into Jerusalem that night and he walked around the city and all he sees is destruction? He doesn't see anybody or any evidence that anybody's even started to work on this wall. And he feels, I got to believe he just felt as though, God, me? How am I going to do all of this by myself? But if you believe it's a glimpse of God and God's calling you into that, God will provide what's necessary to make the next steps. One at a time. He doesn't always lay out the plan so that we can see all the way to the end of the project, but we know what the next faithful step is. And we take it in faith. And it's all about God's power. These two go hand in hand, right? If you have faith, you trust in God's power to be there, to show up, to provide what is needed for the next faithful step, and the next faithful step, and the next faithful step. And finally, you'll have questions. The questions don't stop. Just because you found the answers to make that first step doesn't mean that next step doesn't provide 12 more questions that you've got to wrestle with. Nehemiah's first question was, how am I going to get this done? He took the step and the people said, we're there, let's do it. How are we going to do this? Where's the material going to come from? Well, the king had provided that. The next step. What's the next step? Where is God leading Nehemiah? We're going to talk about, I'm not going to give you that answer now, because we're going to talk about that next week. But where are you on the journey? Where are your questions coming from? I tell folks when we do Bible study together, when we come into a room together and we're trying to guide our way through Scripture, I said we come in with questions, seeking answers from the readings we've done. And I always tell folks, I said, when we gather around, we're going to do our best to wrestle with those questions. But if we're doing our job well and we're studying well, we're going to walk out with more questions than we walked in with. Because that's what Scripture does. It guides us in that way. It causes us to open up our minds and think and go beyond just ourselves and step out in faith. Questions are a good thing. That means we're processing and we're wrestling with what God is guiding us. We're wrestling with that glimpse. It doesn't happen overnight. We read Nehemiah, we can probably sit down and read all of Nehemiah in about an hour. It's like those DIY shows. They build a whole home in 1 hour. It doesn't happen that way. We're talking about lifetime renovations for us. And we got to step into it with faith, realizing that the questions will come. One faithful step at a time. I know I struggle with this. I struggle with only taking, I'm a planner, right? I was an engineer when I was in construction, and I had schedules that would have 1,000 action items on it, and I can tell you where we're going to start and where we're going to end. Ask me if it ever happened in that time frame like it was supposed to. Go ahead, ask me. Never. Never. Now, I've started and finished on time, but what happened in between never happened the way it was supposed to happen. And that's even in a new construction when you're starting from scratch. So when it comes to a renovation, totally different story. You're all over the place. And questions are constantly coming up as you go through. Well, we tore down this wall here, and plans say there's nothing in it. There's a 3-inch water main in this wall, right in the middle of the new room. What are we going to do? So when we begin taking those faithful steps, when we tear down those walls, We're going to find those things right in the middle of our room. The family issues or relationship issues, or we talk about illness issues, and there are all kinds of things that can show up in the middle of the renovation of ourselves. The thing is we may not have planned for that, but God's already working through it. Because God's already trying to give you the glimpse of the next faithful step. The next faithful step. And that's the journey Nehemiah is taking us on. The next faithful step. With that, I invite you to pray with me. Almighty God, we give thanks for your love, for your place in our life, for the grace that you give us and the forgiveness and mercy that goes along with that. We give thanks that as we take the next faithful step, you are right there at our side, guiding us sometimes, pushing us, directing us when we need to be directed. Lord, we seek your strength and your courage and your wisdom to find those next faithful steps. And Lord, when we step out of faith and we take what we believe is the next faithful step and we find when we get there it was the wrong step, help us to find ways around, to turn back in the direction that you would have us turn, to take your next faithful step. That we would have our lives built around your will, you leading us, rather than us trying to lead you. Lord, it is in your love that we find that strength. It is in your love that we find that courage. Help us to always know that. You are the great I am. You are amazing. And you are our God. We pray this in your Holy Son's name. And all God's people say.
Amen.